Hello everyone, my name is Dom Hebblethwaite and I'm Head of Membership at the Chartered Institute of Linguists, CIOL. I'm delighted to welcome you all to our online roundtable on generative AI, focusing on technology based on large language models and chatbots such as ChatGPT. Today we will explore whether this technology represents the next major revolution, the latest overhyped trend, or whether the truth is somewhere in between. I'd like to introduce you to our panelists for this roundtable, and I will start with Vasiliki Prestige. Vasiliki is a COL chartered linguist and a member of COL's Governing Council. She runs her own freelance translation business consultancy, has been a lecturer in translation, a project manager, and worked as a localization lead for Amazon, amongst many, many other things. Vasiliki brings practical experience and a freelance translator's viewpoint to our discussion. Vasiliki, delighted to have you with us. How are you?
Hi, Dom. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. I am very well, thank you, and it's so good to be here. And thank you for having me. I think this is going to be an excellent roundtable discussion, and I am very much looking forward to hear what everybody has to say and contribute as much as I can from my experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so our second panelist is Mark Robinson. Mark has been running Alexica, a translation services company specialized in technical translations since 1998. He has extensive background both in translation and business, with German in his language pair. Mark is also a member of COL's Governing Council and is a holder of the Diploma in Translation from COL qualifications. Mark brings us both an SME language service provider perspective along with translation expertise. Mark, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Dom. Great to be here.
Great, wonderful to have you here too. And last but not least, we welcome Florian Fass. Florian is co-founder and managing director at Translator, the leading analysis and research website for the translation, localization, and language technology industry. Florian, who holds an MA in translation, has had a significant career in localization, including running the Asia-Pac operations for CLS Communications before setting up Translator. Florian brings us research industry expertise, not least from Slater's hot off the press language industry market report, 2024 market report, which has some fascinating and specific translator use cases on generative AI. Florian, wonderful to have you here. How are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me here today, Dom. Really looking forward to this conversation. Thanks.
That's great. Okay, so just to update everyone on the format for this roundtable, we have a very large audience for this event, and we're going to start with a brief presentation on generative AI. We'll then have some polling to understand you, our audience, and your experiences with the latest generative AI technologies. And just before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping. To manage the roundtable effectively, everyone's camera and microphone has been switched off. There will be time for a Q&A session. All the questions will be managed via the questions panel. So please just go ahead and post your questions as we go along, and we'll try and cover as many as we can. Okay, so to kick us off, I will start with a brief presentation. And the usual question, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Okay. So we'll have introductions, presentations, snap polls, thoughts from the panel, and then your questions and comments. Just first of all, of course, we're the Chartered Institute of Linguists, the only chartered body for linguists in the UK, and the second largest professional body for linguists in the world after the American Translators Association. As the Chartered Institute of Linguists, we of course are global in outlook with the widest sort of international reach and membership. Like all chartered bodies, we have our own purpose objects to contribute to the study and practice of languages and provide information for those studying languages and recognize those qualified as linguists in the professions or using their languages for any other purposes. So we've seen a number of technology revolutions, if you like, within the translation industry or profession. I think it's fair to say that there can be very few professions that have been more affected by technology over the last years and decades. Even we've had, of course, terminology tools, translation memory, machine translation, statistical machine translation and neural machine translation, and now generative AI, which of course we're being bombarded with left, right and center everywhere we look. So what do we actually mean by generative AI? This definition is from Wikipedia, and of course Wikipedia has been used to train a lot of generative AI models as well. We're talking about models that learn patterns and structure of input training data to generate new data with similar characteristics. What we've seen is a massive recent boom with chatbots based on large language models, the most famous one, of course, being ChatGPT. So what's different about generative AI models compared to machine translation? Well, the next rather sort of terrifying slide from a recent piece of research from Monash and Macau universities in collaboration with Tencent AI, which is a Chinese AI or technology company, gives a sort of potentially terrifying vision of the future. They set up a AI translation company with a series of designated roles from CEO through to editors, junior editors, translators, localization specialists, proofreaders, all different trans agents doing different roles within that. And the researchers said that this produced much better results than neural machine translation, and even suggested, although in a fairly vague way, that it might be better than human translation, although looking further into the research, that wasn't very clear, and there seemed to be plenty of kind of hallucinations and omissions that we see with generative AI. But this kind of example of, possibly hype from a company and academics brings to mind what we saw with machine translation, because the very first demonstration of machine translation was an IBM and Georgetown University experiment in the 1950s, where they were using punch cards and a rules-based system translating from Russian to English with an operator using the punch cards. And after this, they confidently predicted that translation would be solved within the next 3 to 5 years. We then that kind of died there. The rules-based systems didn't really work, and it wasn't until we had statistical MT and sort of the first sort of Google Translate versions that there was an increase in quality and an increase in hype, and the kind of hype cycle started again and peaked again with neural machine translation, where moving from statistical, they looked to making associations and using neural nets and models such as DeepL and also latest versions of Google Translate and many others. And this hype cycle model actually comes from Gartner, which is a large and important American research firm specialized in IT, and they maintain that every technology has this hype cycle, and it goes through 5 phases, which are an initial technology trigger, a new piece of technology. You then see what they call the peak of inflated expectations, when the hype cycle reaches its peak and people completely overestimate the technology. Then people find problems with it, and you get what they call the trough of disillusionment, where people almost go too negative on the technology, say it's hopeless, it's useless in all these kinds of ways. And then they have what we call the slope of enlightenment, when people sort of come to more sort of level field and what they call the plateau of productivity at somewhere higher than before. So this kind of hype cycle model is is certainly what we've seen with most technology, and it'll be interesting to see if we're in the same sort of cycle with generative AI. In terms of CIOL's view on AI impacts, some of you may have already seen the AI Voices piece we did earlier in the year, with contributions both from Mark and Vasiliki. Effectively, CIOL obviously cannot stop AI technology, much as maybe at times we might like to, but of course there are aspects of it we may need to challenge. There are always new opportunities with models. Certainly more content will be translated. Evermore there is the expectation that everything should be translated. We believe and certainly hope, and our aim is that the human is and will continue to be essential and be there at the heart of the process, and that the most skilled linguists will be in demand. In terms of concerns, obviously unsupervised use or use by people who do not understand the technology and the pitfalls of what they're doing, personal data, fatal errors, hallucinations, which are big problems with particularly with generative AI, model collapse, systems being trained on AI content, and that leading to declines in quality. And we recognize, of course, though, that there are also opportunities, more content being generated, easier to create new versions of content, for example, for translation, efficiency gains, quality checks, versioning, and so forth. This model, this slide from Common Sense Advisory is from before generative AI and ChatGPT, and a vision of the future with the linguist at the heart, either at the heart or in the loop, depending on the type of content. We'd always like them to be at the heart, of course, working with a series of different technological tools, and it remains to be seen how this will change with generative AI. Will generative AI become the next sort of tool that the linguist is working with, or will there be some sort of technological wild west? So we'll see, but we still believe this is the future in the foreseeable future. Okay, we're just going to do some quick polls. We have 3 quick polls, and I wonder if you could on your phone or computer go to slido.com, or you can use the QR code here. And answer the following questions. So slido.com, and if you put in the number there, okay, and we're starting to get the first results coming in. That's great. So how much of a threat or an opportunity are AIs such as ChatGPT? And the results are coming in. We'll carry on waiting here. And we'll just hold it a little bit longer, as this is the first one, to give people time to get onto slide and bring the votes in. Okay, well, just a couple more seconds. This is very interesting. Okay, so we're looking at as a threat or opportunity, a threat similar to machine translation seems to be the highest vote, 39%. The biggest threat to the profession, around about 27%. Not sure yet, 22%. An opportunity, more content, 12% there. So that's very interesting. We actually ran this poll for Translators Day earlier in the year. And at the time there, not sure yet was the biggest vote. So it seems like people are getting clearer ideas about generative AI and what level of threat it is, or in some cases, opportunity. Okay, thank you very much. Our next question. Do you use AIs, generative AIs, such as ChatGPT or other models based on LLMs as a productivity tool? So never. Yes, I've tried it. I use it for translation work. only for purposes other than translation. I mean, a lot of people, of course, outside of the translation and language industry are using ChatGPT for all sorts of purposes. So we'll keep this open, and this is a very interesting one. We will also share the results of these results after the roundtable. Okay, so it looks like we're settling for 32% of our audience using generative AI as a productivity tool, also for translation work. Very interesting. Around about 25 to 30% using tools such as ChatGPT, but only for purposes other than translation. So as a tool for other purposes. 22% never will use it, and 18% tried but didn't find useful. So that's around 40% effectively not using these tools, and around 60% using these tools, with those using it slightly more for translation than only for other purposes. Thank you very much. That's really very, very interesting. And then finally, in the last 12 months, has all the talk around AI, and you'd have to be living under a rock not to have been reading about AI and generative AI, has it changed your conversations with clients, direct clients, with LSPs? Has it made a difference? And this is again something very, very fascinating to see. So we'll keep this open. And so okay, so for those where it's significantly changed their work at the moment, we're around 12%. So people who've had massive differences specifically from generative AI, that is around sort of 10 to 12%. But 40% have seen some impact on their work. So that is definitely significant. And sort of those who've not really seen any difference, not really, 28%. Changed the conversations, but no difference to work, 21%. So I guess you could say that's actually about a 50-50, with it having changed some aspects of the work, but not huge differences yet at this stage. So thank you also for that. That's really, really helpful. Okay. And then just before we then move on to our panel, this is a very fresh piece of research from the European Language Council, which CIOL was promoting on social media channels as well. This is from March the 20th to May the 1st. So 600 answers from translators, 83% of those independent freelancers. Sort of headlines here: 61% consider generative AI to be a threat. 65% consider it to be unsafe. In terms of biggest drawbacks, output quality is the biggest potential drawback. Some benefits from time, some benefits from cost, and then a kind of mixed picture on mental effort. And one more slide here, and this is very interesting, just comparing the use of this translator audience, and 83% again were freelance translators. Whether they're using machine translation, neural machine translation, just over half using machine translation for themselves as a productivity tool. And generative AI, 158 users, so that is about 25% or so already using generative AI. So you could say less people using it than machine translation, or you could say for a new technology that over 25% are using it is already very significant. In terms of the key drivers, comparing machine translation and generative AI, these are fairly similar. The biggest difference in terms of the key driver with generative AI is easy, and certainly chatbots such as ChatGPT are relatively easy to use. In terms of the barriers, the reasons for not using it, so the differences here with generative AI, not relevant, don't need it, is much more prevalent. And the rest of the picture is fairly similar, but it's noteworthy that there are even more concerns about ethics and confidentiality, something that's always been a concern with machine translation, particularly with Google Translate, but this is even more of a concern with generative AI. Okay, so that's enough from me. I think we should move to the panel now. And Florian, if I could turn to you first. Slator has just published its own research, and including some fascinating examples on how translators were using generative AI. And so maybe could I ask you first the top two questions here. What are the biggest problems and challenges caused by generative AI, and what opportunities do you see that exist for translators?
Yeah, the big questions. Thanks, Dom. So first I want to start with a fascinating overlap in data or in results, basically, because we also asked the same question almost in our report: do you use AI as a productivity tool in our research? And we asked about 700, and I think we had 775 participants in our survey. And in the survey we just did, it was 35, and now I checked, and we had 33 for almost the same question. So it seems like we're going for a consensus here. About 1/3 is using these models now for translation work. Personally, I'm checking it like every week or so, and it's interesting that the latest one, the GPT-O, at least for my language combination, English into German, kind of financial content, is actually getting worse than GPT-4. So it's
right.
Yeah, I don't know what it's doing, but the GPT-4 one is still better. So yeah, when I quote some of the statistics now in the next maybe 3 or 4 minutes that I'll speak here, it's from our market report, where we surveyed a lot of industry stakeholders, but also linguists. So we had about over 700 participants. Actually, we sourced them mostly via our Toolbox newsletter. So we have a dedicated translator linguist newsletter that goes out once a month, and we have about 10,000 subscribers. So that was kind of the source of that data. Some people had questioned that on LinkedIn. That's why I'm saying it here. So let's start with the problems and challenges, and then we go to the opportunities here. I think one key problem is almost a perceptual problem, because at the highest levels of companies now, it seems like a lot of people think translation is like a solved problem. And like, oh, why are we spending money at all on this, like human, machine, or otherwise, right? Isn't this something that's solved now? And these people have a lot of other stuff on their plate. So now, for the first time almost ever, they're thinking about this. So it's this kind of top-down perceptual problem. And things like the TransAgents paper you referenced before don't help. So I'm sure it's like a very narrow test set, and then they build it, and then they come out with a paper that's like kind of clickbaity or headline grabbing, and then if you actually dig a little deeper, there's like 50 caveats. So this type of stuff doesn't help, and that then this type of perception puts a lot of pressure on the entire organization. To give you an example, we just had somebody ping us for like a potential consulting mandate, and they were saying, look, we're using machine translation, we're using our LSPs, but now I'm getting a lot of pressure from C-level to like fully automate this. And the pressure is not just fully automating it, it's also, can we just get this all for free? That was literally in the email. Like, why are we still paying even for machine translation? So again, kind of a perceptual problem. I think one of the challenges also back kind of in the reality layer of this for linguists is also that post-editing generally is just a very different kind of activity. And so if you started your career in translation like I did, right, and all of a sudden you're expected to post-edit and use all of these cool tools around, it's kind of a different experience, just a different work experience. And I don't think that the user interface is where it should be still. like it's still like very much you're fixing the sentences and you're copy pasting, and maybe sometimes you're deleting the empty and writing from scratch. So I think innovation there has stalled a little bit. So yeah, so there's all of these challenges, perceptual reality, and yeah, many more. So, but let me turn to the opportunities also. The good news is I think good translation, expert translation is actually far from a solved problem. And I'll give you two examples. My wife runs a small law firm. She has a blog because I tell her you got to put out content, right? Regularly, once a month at least, a good blog post. So she writes them in German, and then she needs them translated into English because she works a lot with expats and like international businesses here in Zurich. It was incredibly hard to find a good translator 3 years ago, and then we had to go through a kind of a cycle because that translator left, and it was incredibly hard to find a good translator again. And DeepL or Microsoft Translator is just no option. If you're a lawyer and you're putting your heart and soul into a blog post like that, you put it into DeepL and it's like, sure, but no way I'm going to put this online, right? And this is 2024, now, June, right? So still now, she actually still sometimes needs to edit the output from the expert human translator. Even that still needs a fair amount of editing. So this is not a solved problem. And you can put it into ChatGPT and give it the most elaborate prompt. It's still not there. You're not going to publish it. Okay, that's number one. Another good example. Sometimes people mistake Slater for a language service provider or a language technology company, and so they send us like requests for us to like help them with their translation work and things like that. So about 2 months ago, we got a really interesting inbound email, and I'm going to have to read this for you. So it's from a person that's relatively new to localization, working at a large e-commerce company that's growing really quickly, and they have a lot of content, of course, on the internet, a lot of content to localize, right? And so that individual asked us, hey, do you have a solution for this? And then they said, as everyone out there is using mostly AI to do their translation, I would like to know how accurate can your solution be, and are there any proofreading phases in which a real human approves the content? I'm investing a lot in translations right now, but even more in proofreading and adapting texts, which were supposed to be already localized. Now think about that. That kind of encapsulates to me June 2024 perfectly. It's like the perception is, oh, this is AI. Anyway, everything's AI, right? Now I'm using the everything's AI, but the results I'm getting back are like, well, I still need to then go in and manually proofread and fix and adjust. So do you have humans? Can you help me? I got all the tech, but you still have the humans and the experts that can help me here. And this is not some like ancient quote. This is like literally a few weeks ago, So in terms of the opportunity, there's a lot of opportunity still as all of these content volumes go up. And I want to give you just one final quick example. Actually, I published a podcast with the CEO of Phrase, formerly MemSource, just yesterday. And he said in the podcast that they were attempting to fully like automate the LQA, so the language quality assurance language quality assessment step. And they had to find, they found in the end that like there's just no way to fully automate it. And so they still had they needed that human expert layer in it, right? So even one of the most well-funded translation technology companies in the world is again, June 2024, finding that this last mile is very hard to automate. And yeah, I mean, in terms of the use cases that translators are using AI for, just to close from our survey, I mean, we had, translate source text, as I just said, 33%, and things like quick term or style consistency checks, maintain glossaries, generate text summaries, quality estimation, but it's all kind of almost in the single digits. So there's still a very much kind of an experimental phase, I think, going on the linguist side to really find out what really adds value to my day-to-day and what's just noise out there, and maybe I can try it, but it's not really helping me. So yeah, that's in a nutshell some of the findings.
Very good. That's very interesting, and it would be fascinating to know also amongst our audience the 30% or so who are using ChatGPT sort of use cases you found that works to help you in your translation workflows. Vasiliki, could I ask the same questions to you? What do you see as the biggest problems, challenges, and even opportunities caused by generative AI for translators?
First of all, I feel that Florian has done an incredible job in his response, and I've been nodding my head several times listening to him, especially with his initial response around what's being the biggest challenge right now. I completely agree, is this it's perception issue on the very high level. In my experience, having worked within a large organization for 6 years, very close to the executive suite, to the C-suite, the higher the decision makers are, the further removed they are from the actual work that takes place. So they do not understand how things work or do not work. And so in order for them to have a buy-in into let's say process automation or process improvements, they need to see some kind of disaster first. So if a disaster comes and they realize, oh, this is not going well, or a translation we did for a product, it's not selling well, or why can we not get, for example, the French products into the French market faster than we thought we can, or wait, the problem is translation. Then they start wondering, well, why is it translation and what's going wrong there? So we certainly have a perception issue that's a challenge. At the same time, I see this being an opportunity because we are the experts. So I think in June 2024, translators, or the skilled linguists, as we say, needs to be somebody who absolutely understands the technology. You may not want to use it, or you may not have found uses for it in your day-to-day, but we cannot afford not to be able to understand it, because if we do not understand it, we will not be able to explain it to others properly. And who else is going to be a better person to explain it to them other than we, the people that, you know, we do the translation work. If you speak with developers or people in tech, they still have incredible amounts of gaps in understanding how actually human translation works, or how, in fact, translation works as a cognitive process and what it requires. So to me, it feels, you know, a challenge and an opportunity at the same time. But in order to feel empowered to, number one, use the technology, but also advocate for what we do, we need to embrace it. We need to understand it. We need to receive the training. And I don't think it's something we should be afraid of. But then, you know, at the same time, there are so many unknowns there. So this is constantly developing and evolving. And as Florian said, you know, you check it one day is worse, you check it the next day is better. And just yesterday in preparation of today's panel, I threw something into ChatGPT to translate into Greek, and I felt it was better, but actually ChatGPT 4, right? Not the latest version. So exactly what Florian was saying. So loads of issues we can pick up and talk about. Yet, you know, DeepL is still much better than ChatGPT. So all of a sudden, everybody's challenging us and our existence and our work because AI has become this trendy word, while we have been, in fact, using it for such a long time. And I feel like we are in a better place to talk about it and understand it than other people. So, you know, challenges is really educating, training ourselves and others, and opportunity is actually coming after that. You know, content keeps coming out, so I think content will keep being generated, but it really boils down to whether, do we care? Does the client care? Do they like garbage in, garbage out? So if, you know, in the case of Florian's wife, when she puts so much work into her legal blog, she doesn't want to have something of lower quality than what she's produced in the first instance, but something that's not publishable or something that's for an internal reference resource only, maybe people don't care as much, so they will not go into the process of, you know, quality, right? You know, only yesterday I was translating legal notices for a website of a very large global organization. And what was really interesting in there was that it mentioned at some point that employees are not allowed to use automated processes when it comes to decision making. So they can use automated processes to fill in data, to increase their productivity when it comes to other administrative tasks, however, that do not impact on decision making regarding a human. So I feel that in several different areas, lawmaking, policy making is trying to not police necessarily, but safeguard in a way what we can and cannot do with technology. And I see that being eventually transferred across to the applications of translation. I hope I have answered, and please let me know if there is anything that I didn't you know, I didn't reply to. I'm just having, you know, way too many thoughts right now, and I feel that we will keep bringing up the topics as they become relevant during the panel.
That's for sure, but yeah, absolutely, Vasiliki, in this point of perception that you mentioned, and Florian is absolutely key. I mean, I've seen that myself, even with machine translation before that. In the past, people expecting machine translation and not understanding, expecting that just to do the job, you know, without that kind of understanding of, you know, all the drawbacks and the need for the human. But Mark, what do you see in terms of problems and challenges and maybe opportunities that we're getting specifically from generative AI?
Yeah, both challenges and opportunities, and I've been nodding along with both Florian and Vasiliki, so you won't get an argument there. But for individual translators, there's challenges on top of the technology challenge. One is the challenge you've always had, that you're operating in a very fragmented industry. So getting knowledge is difficult if you're working on your own in a very small team. You've got to pull in information from the Institute, from Florian's excellent podcast, from reading around the subject, and it's difficult. And then you've got to select a tool. Are you going to select an AI tool now? Are you going to have one that comes into your CAT tool, if you're still calling them that, and integrating? Are you going to set something separately? Are you going to pay for it? Are you going to try and do it for free? All very difficult. We're going to need training, all of us, on the value chain. And where do you access that? Who do you trust to train you up? Where do you spend your money on training? How transparent are you going to be? I've always thought I love talking about the tools I use for translation and how marvelous it is. Clients often don't care. And at what point are you going to just sort of say, look, I used AI to help me with this, or are you just thinking this is just part of what I do? You know, a plumber uses their tools, a translator uses these tools. And managing the value for what we do as linguists is going to get harder. So we've had a very easy price per word model for decades. Does that still apply? Challenges that are sort of on the horizon. And I think the final one that's hit me this week is I've had a very busy week, and it's actually been quite low tech. And that happens, and you've got to keep your eye on the horizon as well, and make mental time to think about what's going to happen in months or years ahead. So it's tough. Well done for being here. Pat on the back for translators for making time to think about it now. So in terms of opportunities, I think the consensus is going to be vastly more content out there that needs translating in future, and expert linguists are going to slot in to each piece of work, each use case for the technology, if you like, and it's a question of where the linguist can add value. And if we get that right, we're doing the interesting stuff rather than any drudgery that we might have had in translation work. So the opportunity to make our lives more interesting there. There are going to be jobs in 10 years that don't exist, but I'm convinced that they're going to involve core language skills and the high levels of education and cultural nuance that we can bring now. I think we need to be thinking about, I'm going to call it solution selling here. So there's an issue that we're not, the linguists aren't necessarily technology experts, but we are going to be the people who can say to a client, look, that piece of your website can be translated using a machine. This part can be used with a machine, but with human input at this level. This bit here is really important. Just leave that to people, or, you know, recommending where the right tool and the right people fit in. That's going to be an opportunity. So maybe your virtual business card might say translator and consultant linguists. You can argue about that one. And I think another opportunity, just from what I do, is just the co-pilot vision of AI. So you've got this really brainy assistant sat on your shoulder, and you can ask them really difficult linguistic questions. They don't argue with you, they don't get upset, get things wrong occasionally, but so do people. But the power and the speed of the assistant that you've got now is just an opportunity for everybody, I think.
Fascinating. Yes, thank you very much for that, Mark. So what I'd like to now ask the panel is try and get an understanding of to what extent is generative AI sort of already affecting translation, and perhaps we've had some examples of, or we've asked the audience how many of them are using generative AI themselves, but how much is it the other way, coming from the client, coming from the industry? Do we have any sense? Maybe Florian, come back to you first, because maybe there's some more in your research report on that, in terms of multinational companies, LSPs, using generative AI themselves.
I mean, first, one interesting data point was, I think we asked the buyers, I think we surveyed almost 100 buyers about, like, what do they care about? Very basic question, and then listed like everything from quality to, speed of delivery to like innovation in AI. And it was very conventional. It was like almost everybody said quality, number one, that's my selection criteria from LSP. And the very lowest one was AI innovation. So exactly what Mark said. It's like they don't care how the sausage is made. They don't care what the tools the plumber uses, as long as the thing gets done. So like, you need to position yourself as, on the LSP side, like, as being tech forward, but at the end of the day, the client just wants to get great translations and language work back very quickly, right? So that's just to start. Also on the jobs side, and that is filtering through, because these tools are now so much more capable. There's like jobs coming up that didn't exist even a year or two ago. Give you one example. There's a company called VoiceSeed. They do emotional voice in multiple languages, right? And they have a platform, and I went to the Gala conference a couple of months ago, and they gave me like a demo. And so they have a platform where somebody, arguably somebody with deep linguistic skills, like basically post edits the multilingual audio output, right? And it looks almost like a cat tool, and you're going through there and you're editing and you're kind of fixing certain things. And if the AI like translates something wrong, but also on a pronunciation level. So for example, in German, like, we use a lot of anglicisms. So, you would actually pronounce it like in English, but inside the German sentence. And so there's like these nuanced ways of like fixing the audio output. Now, that is only possible because these large language models now provide these super powerful capabilities, and these platforms exist to do that. So this is almost a new job. And the founder told me, like, I don't even know what to call this job, right? Is it like audio AI post editor? Like, and if you're not a very expert linguist, you can't even do that job. So it's basically filtering through, the tech filters through into new opportunities, new roles. On the flip side of this, you know, for linguists, there's this like massive wave of new stuff that you feel you're supposed to know and work and be expert in, and you know that must be super overwhelming. I mean, it's overwhelming for me because on the Slater side, we're trying to keep up with all of this and trying to make sense. So, but I don't even have to learn these tools. So if I had to learn all these tools, would be really hard. So I guess that's maybe a little bit on the negative side. Not sure if I answered the question, but just to kind of respond a little bit to what Mark said, and yeah, so how these innovations filter through.
Yeah, that was very interesting. And Vasiliki, I seem to remember you mentioning about doing some sort of similar work with voice over AI. I don't know if you want to tell us about that.
Yes, of course. I've been listening to everybody making so many notes down, and I don't know where to start from. So I think, Dom, correct me if wrong, your initial question was, how do we receive this from our clients? What do we get?
Yeah,
what is our
the extent that AI, generative AI is affecting sort of your working life. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly as Mark and Florian said, some people, some clients, number one, don't care about it. They may not even know about it. And then you have the other side of the coin where some of them do get in touch and say, hey, we want you to work on this, but it's not going to be translation and it's not going to be review. It's going to be post editing, and we threw it into DeepL and we used some AI, and do you think it's good enough? It doesn't happen to me often, but it has happened. So then the interesting thing about that is that on both occasions, I ended up doing the work and getting paid the same amount of money I would have been paid if I was to translate it, because the issue there was, even though the quality was very good, and I have to be honest, the time scale was absolutely insane, because they give you so much stuff, and because they say, well, it's already done, we're not going to give you the 2 weeks that you normally get, so you're going to have 1 week. And they say, but we do understand that you don't have much time and you have to work overtime and you have to work weekends, so we're going to give you the rate anyway. So you feel like, okay, what is happening? What is the difference here? And in the end, they got very high quality level. They were very happy with it. I was happy with the input I've received. I got paid what I was gonna get paid anyway, and I felt like I've done less effort. So sometimes, I feel that it works for me. It does, it works for me, not against me. Other times it's, I'm just speaking on what Mark said in his response earlier. Sometimes I will use my NMT and DeepL and something else, and I will, get out content translated so much faster and do my human expert review and give it to the client, and they're very happy, and they still pay me what I would normally request to get paid. They don't know I've used the technology. Now, some of them like to know, some of them is exactly that response. They just say, oh, we don't care. We just want high quality and do it, within this time frame. So we have different approaches, I feel, and I've seen both sides of the coin, when somebody requests the technology and somebody says, I don't care, I trust you. But I feel that especially with LSPs, and what I've been seeing is that there is some kind of domino effect. So the LSP will get this kind of questions from their end client around, hey, do you use innovation? Do you use AI? Do you use NMT? And so that filters down to the translator. It's then the LSP that will go to the translator and say, hey, our clients are pushing us to use the tech, so we're pushing you to use the tech, or we want you to do this faster, or we want you to do it cheaper. At the same time, it's kind of hard to know completely and with clarity how much this is affecting us, because we can see from our experience, if you're a translator and you're not Slater, you don't have the resources or the data. You don't have like thousands of organizations to go and put the question to, right? So that's what Slater does is so useful, because I can only talk about my experience and what I've been seeing from my clients. So I don't know how much work perhaps I am not getting because of AI, because that's just something, how can I have this information? I don't have that information. It's different if you've had a client and now they come to you and say, oh, we no longer give you work because somebody else is doing it for us or AI is doing it for us. And it's another question, never have had this client in the first place, right? So I feel like there is so many still unknowns within this. And going back to the very interesting project that Florian was talking about, and you've asked me about voiceover and voice training and emotional voice intelligence. So I've worked for a couple of big tech companies, and one of them, actually, the project we did was before COVID, so that's like, 2018 maybe. So essentially they were developing a speech to text technology for several different languages, and they've sent to me all these texts with recordings that were automated, and it was Greek voice notes essentially sent on a instant messaging app with the Greek text output. And my job was to listen to the recordings from normal, real life people, not bots, right? And see the output of the automated speech to text technology. And then I was given certain codes to log onto, like a developer's bug system, whether this is an issue of intonation, if this is an issue of a typo, if this is a grammatical issue, or if it's imagining a new word. Or so by doing that, essentially, my feedback was training the automated speech to text tech for this instant messaging app. That was 2018. And so, these days, so many people use this messaging app, and, speech to text is still not perfect, but, so that was a job, right? It was a job, and it was not a translation job. It was a linguist expert consulting role, working together with a tech team of that organization. Then we have massive tech companies like Apple that develop constantly their intelligence. So their intelligence is Siri, right? So I think everybody knows Siri, Alexa, right? So Amazon has Alexa and so on. So I think the job description that Florian was looking for is language producer or language producer technology, something like that. At least this is how Apple titles their staff that works with the tech team to improve Siri in other languages. So they class their team under the intelligence and innovation department. So all Apple linguists are under intelligence and innovation department. So we see a spin in, kind of rebranding of skills. And I think, to me, it's perfectly acceptable to start seeing yourself as a translator or consultant linguist. And why should the big KPMG guys that come from finance or insurance then sell consulting services? They sell the industry knowledge, and that's something that we can do, having acquired the right skills, expertise, and so on. But it's a constantly changing landscape with several unknowns, and I often feel that we may be losing sight of the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is looking at what's going on in the world as a whole and not just focusing on the tech, because sometimes the threat is not going to be the tech. The threat is going to be something else, the wars, the conflict, the silent trade wars, and all these things. Or even Rishi Sunak announced his election, and the markets go crazy, and you're not, you're losing a client, or you're not getting enough work, and it's not because of AI, it's because there is some kind of political turmoil, right? So there is so many unknowns there, and things we cannot control. But I think the only solution is to just keep going, keep learning, and yeah.
Fascinating, thank you. Okay, yes, Mark, same question to you, maybe one more. So I mean, with your sort of smaller LSP and translator hat on, what extent do you see generative AI affecting translation, and also, do you think translators are they better prepared for an AI world than most professionals? As Vasiliki says, AI is everywhere, all around the world, not just within our industry profession. So yeah, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, really interesting. And yes, we've just got to keep learning every day. I've come up with something we might disagree on, Florian. So I thought that'd be good because we can all have a debate. But I think I'm going to do this without mentioning any brands. The leading cat tool providers, I think, are doing a good job actually of integrating, first of all, neural machine translation. So that model where you look at your translation memory first, then NMT. And I think they're doing a good stab at integrating AI as well into the environment, our very familiar, for those who've been around a few years, environment of the cat tool that we work in. So you've got what really is a mature technology in the cat tools, bringing in the new tech. And I thought for translator, I've thought for a long time it's valid because we're not tech experts really. So if you get to know one cat tool really well and hope that they innovate, it's still valid to hope that they will innovate using NMT and AI, and you're taking the benefit. So so that's one option we could discuss. In terms of other industries, I think this is fascinating, and I've been chatting around various people. And look, I think that this thing about NMT and AI integrating into cat tools gives us a really good head start, because I think it was 2016 where things looked really different. NMT came in 8 years ago, long time, tech world. So I've been talking to some law firms, and they've got some fantastic new research tools on the horizon. So it's going to really save people time. What I was hearing is they're not using it yet. It's coming, it's going to be great, but they've got to integrate that into their workflows. I talked to some accountants who can see AI doing basic ledger work in the very near future. Some worries there about, look, this is work that used to be done by junior accountants. How are they going to learn, have experience, make mistakes? And I'm sure that's something that lots of professions are going to come up against. I taught some teachers who said to a generative AI model, write me a presentation for 10-year-olds on the subject of rain. And it does it, and you tweak it, and that's now a save. That's a fantastic issue, but so many things to think about with education, because then the children go away and do their work using artificial intelligence, and how do you police and get the best out of that? I've been speaking to people in the medical world, and AI used to interpret scan results, for example, is fabulous time saver. So the AI will analyze 1,000 scans, and that might say, look, you've got 10 and really need a human to look at. That's a great thing for humanity, but again, it's got to be integrated, and it's very new. And I talked to somebody in big pharma, and I found it wasn't being used yet at all in terms of regulation and bringing new products to market. So you can argue that we're well ahead of this, and this really interesting thought that both Vasiliki and Florian have brought, that people are at different points, and we do frankly have clients saying, do it faster and cheaper using technology, go. But of course they don't know the technology as well as we do, and we need to be the people who can say, well, possibly in that use case, but actually this is a different situation. So there's so much settling down to do with AI in the years to come, isn't there? But I think we're starting to see how it's being implemented in different worlds.
Very good. Okay. And for the panel, just obviously we've talked about potentially becoming not just translators but also consultants. So really, yeah, what are the sort of skills or capabilities a translator should have or look to develop, and what remains special about the skilled linguist in this kind of AI tech first world? Who'd like to take that one on first?
I can take it, but let me just say maybe just 60 seconds on why I think translators are better prepared than most. I think actually like probably the single best profession or the profession that's almost singularly well prepared for this, starting with the foundational architecture of this entire AI boom that we're in right now was literally invented for machine translation in 2017. There's a paper called "Attention is All You Need." You Google that, and it was in 2017. A bunch of Google people and basically invented it. It's a model called Transformer, and it was the very first use case for this architecture was machine translation, right? And so, like, we've had a major head start as an industry, and which other industry is essentially almost fully transitioned to working with AI? I mean, I wouldn't know. I mean, like, basically right now, almost everybody is in this language industry is interacting with AI. I mean, NMT is AI. It's the same thing, right? I mean, it's kind of details if it's an LLM or a small LM, right? So, and look, just go on X and see the commentary by all the computer programmers that are freaking out right now because they're like, oh my God, this thing is like coding, you know, and they're in the post-editing discovery cycle. They've been in that for a year now. So we're way ahead, just to say that. Skills, what's beyond the pure translation skills? I think the pure translation skill is super important. And there's two layers that you can, I think, broad stroke layer that you maybe want to specialize in. There's like the subject matter expert layer, and then maybe there's something almost like the creativity layer, right? So on the one hand, you can become an absolute expert in, I don't know, equity research. That was like my specialization. I could probably still outperform any LLM if in German, English equity research, because it's just, you know, something that I've done for like 5 years. So in that specific domain that you're in, you become the absolute go-to expert, and that'll set you apart from any LLM, I think, for for foreseeable future. Or on the creativity side, right? You basically you're becoming, or you are, it's just an incredibly creative writer, creative translator, and so it's probably hard to combine the two, but there's kind of an edge to be gained in either one of them. And then just beyond pure translation skills, I mean, a general openness and tech savviness. You know, there's all these tools, sign up to them. A lot of them have like some free trial version, get used to some of the user interfaces they have. And yeah, just be open. Maybe not every cat tool. I mean, there's all these other cool tools out there as well that one can use that are based on these LLMs. So yeah, expert level or creativity, and the general openness for tech savviness.
Vasiliki, do you feel we're better prepared than most professionals for an AI world? And then what additional skills beyond pure translation skills should we be looking to have or develop?
I can reply to the first part of the question with 100% confidence that yes, we are. And it's not because I'm saying it. It's because I have been to so many conferences and networking events and talking to people that are not from translation industry. They're from pharma, they're from tech, they're from medical tech, from fintech, old tech. And I can tell you, they all struggle. They try so hard to incorporate AI and the latest tech in their innovations, in their workflows, and in their systems, whether it's a new medical device or whether it's, you know, a program reading and understanding a CT scan or a PET scan, or analyzing data very fast for a law firm to understand whether, you know, they receive this huge pack of documents and they use the AI to scan very quickly and see which ones do I actually need to pay attention to for this case, and which ones do I just, get rid of what is relevant? And they're so fearful because I think to an extent, other industries have a higher risk in applying the AI tech than we do. So they're a lot more policed. They're a lot more, restricted as to what they can and cannot do. And to them, it's a very new thing almost. For us, it's something that we've had, NMT, MT, all of that. It's AI. So I think, and it's not. I've had. I was in a meeting only last month, and it was all about VC funds. Where do they? It was a meeting between young entrepreneurs, startups, and huge VC funds and angel investors and all that, and asking them where would they put their money. So of course, my question is to them: do you receive or do you see a lot of language innovation startups that come to you for investment, or have you invested? Have you thrown big funds into an organization that's promising you to develop some kind of language solution? And the answer is no, they're not. They were not investing into language tech or AI solutions specifically for translation. They were more into medical tech. Is a huge field right now. Everything is about sciences, and that's where they try to bring the investment into solutions that help with that. And then the second question was, do you think that translators, how do you see translators or linguists, will they be obsolete very soon? And I said, based on my experience, I have been using the technology. I'm still working. I'm still here. I've been using it since, 2016, 17, 18. And, I've mentioned this before during our CIOL conference panel. The response I've had from huge investment, a senior investor in Sequoia, they're huge in America, was that he said, you've been living in the future in the past. So he said, you're experiencing right now what most of other industry professionals, you have experienced, all these years ago, what other industry professionals are experiencing right now or in a few years from now. That was an eye-opener for me because I have not thought of myself that way before. And it came from somebody completely outside this industry and somebody who is really into the tech and knows what's going on. This is their job. So as to the other skills that we need to have and continue to build so that we offer value and we come across as somebody who is a valuable asset to the client, I think, yes, of course, it goes without a given what we call pure translation skills. You have to be more than good. You have to be more than average, to continue having the work. Otherwise, the person that will be replaced is the person that does the same exact output as the AI or as the NMT. So if you need to be better than that. So that's to start. Then several clients will continue to choose the human translator, and I have felt that. I have both felt that, and I have been told that with interpreting as well. That listen, we didn't really need this translation, and we didn't really need you here today, but we wanted you here today. We wanted you here today because what you represent is that we look good for our client because we are investing in their culture. We are investing in their language. When we have a translator or when we have an interpreter, it shows we respect. We respect half of the audience. We respect the other, side of the negotiation. So the translator brings on the diplomatic skill, the reliability, the trustworthiness, almost, sometimes a political punch bag situation, that a client cannot trust the tech for that, because something goes wrong. And that's the other major issue. They cannot blame the tech. Who is going to take responsibility for something that went wrong if they've only used tech and not human? So the human translator is absorbing the liability often, and I think we're used as a liable resource there. So that's why we also need to be protected and understand, you know, and charge for the value we offer. Of course, the creativity that that Florian mentioned, and then going quickly back to what Mark mentioned earlier, having had received a lot of work this week that was very low tech effort work, I have been feeling the same over the last month, and I have caught myself being very frustrated because I've received projects that just make me, you know, feel like I don't want to deal with them because they're things I cannot use any tech on. So we have all these legacy documents that, I'm sorry, but sometimes even I cannot read them with my glasses, and you know, these an OCR system cannot read. You cannot throw them into any platform. So, and then it depends as well. We have to be very practical on this advice too. I think it depends so much on what kind of area do you work in as a translator. So is it a creative? Is it legal? Is it medical? I feel that certain industries are more tech resistant due to higher risk complications or implications, and some are less so. So I feel that we need to also look at what skills do we need to develop if we want to create a sustainable future for us. And if you are a translator working for an industry that you feel tech is very much affecting it, and you don't want that and you don't like that, then you could be looking into diversifying more. And I know also, you know, this is, you know, long response, I know, but the language combination, the language pairs also make a huge difference in whether your work is affected by technological advancements or not, because the data pools for some languages are much bigger than for smaller languages. And the further a language is removed from English, we know the more difficult it is for the output to be of high quality. So there are things there that statistically a translator can look at and make strategic decisions around what skills do I need to drop or improve. And because it's not just about, you know, we keep saying keep learning, but you know, there's only 24 hours in a day, so you at some point you can also say, right, I've been doing all these things, what's not working for me, and stop it and start doing something else. And that, I think, is perfectly acceptable. So it's looking at the human skill set from a very high level and seeing, you know, what skills do we need to update. And I think the interpersonal skills, the selling skills, business skills, human level communication skills are always there and appreciated by the right clients who value and understand that being in touch with a human and not a robot or a tech is far more valuable and worthy to them, and that's what they ask for.
Fascinating. Thank you very much. And the time is moving on. We're getting loads of questions coming in from the audience. We still have 260 live at the moment, so thank you very much. I think I'll just try and go straight into some of the questions. We'll see how many we can cover. This is an interesting one here, slightly touching what you're just saying now, actually, Vasiliki, as well. But if the most skilled linguists will be the most in demand, will linguists with multiple languages be sought after, or linguists with deeper knowledge of one or two languages? Who'd like to take this one on?
Mark.
Shall I go? Yeah. do you know, I think this is one of the things that hasn't changed. There are situations where having more than one language is applicable, and having deep knowledge is as important as it ever was. So this is kind of why I'm as passionate as ever about children learning languages at school. We have a problem in the UK, and going through to university. Again, we have a big problem in the UK. The core language skills and that cultural understanding are still our superpower as professional linguists, and I don't see that changing.
Yeah, I will concur. I think depth is probably getting more important. Maybe from you might want to hedge by going broad. I mean, that's almost on a, I think, personal enlightenment curve. I mean, I'd love to speak Chinese. I'd love to speak all kinds of languages, right? But on a professional level, I think depth is just incredibly important. Quick example: I spoke to somebody who's working for all the big tech firms in data labeling, and they told me that they're still doing translation, and actually, special project, they're forbidden from using any tech. Literally just almost like typewriter level translation. So some of these big tech firms are using this as kind of the benchmark to check all the others. So you have this human expert benchmark, and that requires an incredible depth to deliver that. So I think depth very, very important.
Very good. Okay. Another interesting question here. How would you define linguist in the new scenario that we see? Maybe Vasiliki, do you want to have a go at this?
Yes, so I don't think the definition of linguist should be changing or is changing because of what's going on with the tech. Linguist is a person who is the language expert, who knows the language construction, who knows the limitation of a language, who can explain to others who don't understand it how does a language work and what you can and cannot do with it. Now, if we place it within the technology concept, a linguist that wants to appear valuable within that sphere as a consultant should be somebody who understands the pairing of language and technology. So if you know and understand already as a translator the CAT tools that you use, whether it's what is MT, what is NMT, what is large language models, and how is everything fed, and how does an AI work, and then you have the expertise of how does your own language works and how does translation work. What are the, we talk about NMT, right? And what is NMT? It's all about neural machine translation, but your brain is NMT. If you understand how your brain works when it does translation and how NMT works, then you can talk about it. So I think it's certainly somebody who is not a developer, you're not a software developer, you're not coding, but you know everything about your language. You are the expert in the language field, plus you understand the intersection. You have to understand the intersection of language and technology. I think that's when you become a valuable linguist within the context of tech, AI, and all of those solutions.
Very good. Mark, Florian, do you see any differences in the how we define linguist, with the latest sort of tech developments?
I don't know, language AI expert or something. I mean, just to put that thing on top, maybe that's more, that would be, it was a joke. It's more of a marketing thing. I think we should maybe remain somewhat conservative. These tools move so quickly. And I mean, we're humans, we have expertise, we're beating the machines at many tasks, and we're still the benchmark. And I mean, somebody out there needs to remain the human benchmark. I find it incredible when somebody says like these machines outperform humans. Well, maybe on the speed, but like obviously not on the quality for now, because what would be superhuman translation quality? I don't know. Like what would, then we just go into, it's like a philosophical discussion, right? Like, okay, yeah, I mean, it's just a room of people, and you have various competing versions of a translation, and then you get into these, like, you know, that we had in the MA program way back 20 years. Like, you just argue 2 hours over which is the better version. And so I doubt that a machine would outperform the best human version so obviously that you'd be like, that everybody would agree. So so no, I think we should maybe remain a little bit conservative on the naming of it.
Very good. Yeah, I've seen a sort of common thing that they reckon sort of the AA models will get to sort of 90% of you know, the expert best human sort of thing. So they may well outperform me in lots of things I'm not a specialist in, but what I'm a specialist in, I'll outperform the machine. So yeah.
I mean, I could go on in this discussion forever. Like these jumps of imagination that sometimes are required in translation. I don't know. I think if an AI ever gets to that point, it's literally Terminator level, and we have other problems to deal with. This like, even if I have an amazing prompt, it still doesn't do that, right? So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I'm sure we could discuss that forever. But so we're getting a lot of questions, very specific questions about confidentiality. And as we saw in the previous sort of survey, that was a big concern of people, both with machine translation and even more so with models such as ChatGPT. So different people asking sort of similar questions, but about using both ChatGPT and DeepL, and concerns about that. Do you see particular concerns? I know it was always a big concern with Google Translate, but with sort of paid for versions, are you more comfortable with data confidentiality? And does it make a difference if it's neural machine translation or something like ChatGPT, generative AI?
Yeah, shall I think this comes back to the point about being open where the client is interested, and because we've got to select a tool that's relevant for this. And yes, clearly in certain situations, confidentiality is a huge issue, but there is tech out there that will get around it. So you can apply NMT AI in a way that won't share client's data using a certain paid for solution. So I think it boils down to the point about being aware and communicating what we're doing where it's needed.
I think the confidentiality issue should be a concern, and aside from, you know, communicating the methods to the client, sometimes, I mean, they don't even care. But I think the most important angle I would bring is to inform our clients before they use the tech. So translators should know, we should know that the moment we drop something into Google Translate, we don't know where it goes and how it is used. Of course, as Mark said, the paid for versions, for example, for DeepL or other tech, brings to me at least, you know, somewhat reassurance, and I'm comfortable with it. But the clients don't know. So the client will drop a huge bank of data into Google Translate. Most of them I find do not even know about the existence of DeepL, let alone, you know, they of course know very much about OpenAI, but they don't think about it. It doesn't cross their mind that the moment that data goes in there is constantly recycled. It's no longer yours. So to me, of course, translators should be extra aware of how they use the content and what implications this has, but also added layer, tell the client, because they don't think about it.
Very good. Okay, a specific question here. Has anyone successfully prompted ChatGPT to detect mistranslations as opposed to other quality problems? Obviously, lots of people are using ChatGPT as a writing tool, proofreading tool. I don't know, Florian, did this come up in your research, using it to detect mistranslations?
I mean, maybe not like manually prompting it, but there's this whole concept of like quality estimation, machine translation quality estimation, right? So there's companies like Modelfront, for example, that do this like at massive scale. So the entire purpose of these technologies is, and many of them switch to these large language models now, is like just detecting errors and like making sure that only what really needs to get reviewed by human according to those automated standards really gets routed into that human in the loop cycle. I think some of these systems work quite well for high volume text types. That's kind of the answer I can give. I guess we can all go and check if ChatGPT is good at finding out mistranslations, but probably depends on the level of error and etc.
So to be, to reply directly to the question, I have not. No, I have not used it to measure or detect translation or mistranslation. It sounds to me as a very complicated task. You have to throw at it the English, or the source and the target, and then it has to do a review. I think there are other existing technologies, the ones that Florian described, that do that, and they're not ChatGPT, right, Florian?
No, they're not. I mean, they're all now. They've been around for a bit. They use other foundational models. Now I'm sure they're using some of these LLM capabilities, but for now, I think it's not something that individual linguists are using. It's more like Amazon is looking at a gazillion words, and then a bazillion going to that funnel, and the other one goes to the humans. So it's more like that.
Yeah. I mean, I would love ChatGPT to do for me things that I consider laborious or annoying. So, for example, I have a translation, let's say, and all of a sudden the client says, no, it cannot be in second person plural. It needs to be second person singular because I want direct, informal style of writing. And if I just throw it into ChatGPT and say, can you please make this? I also say please as well. Can you make this from second person plural formal into second person singular informal? It just doesn't do it. It just misses so many things, and it's annoying. So I would love it to do these kind of things, or turn something from feminine into masculine, or plurals into singulars, or make it more, I don't know, trustworthy or convincing. And then it starts writing some stuff that nobody ever says, So I just want it to be, we all want it to be better, but I just keep finding me being better. I guess it's a good thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. We're running out of time, but a number of questions about how we see it sort of changing. And this is obviously not just AI in general, MT and with more post editing and things, translation workflows changing. Do we still sort of expect a sort of per word rate, and how should we sort of be negotiating that with clients and LSPs, or are pricing models going to change, do we think?
Yeah. I think it's been a really good model as price per word, because there's always been this argument, look, the lawyer just says I charge lots of amount of money per hour, and then you just pay it, and we find it hard to do that. And it's valid that we don't, because language translation is often part of a project, and a client might want to know in advance how much each element of their project is, and we can give the quote. And it's a proxy for time spent, really. So we know by charging so many pounds, euros per 1,000 words, actually that means so much money earned per hour. But I do think it's harder with the technology that's here now and is coming, because the amount of work you get through in an hour varies enormously depending on the use case and situation. So it's a difficult transition, but I see it as going into a pay per hour sort of situation.
Yeah, fully agree. I think it's incredibly words per hour has been incredibly sticky. We've been talking about per hour pricing now for 10 years, and I thought it was just around the corner, like in 2016. It was not, but like I think there's just this long trend towards per hour, but it will take even longer. I mean, I completely underestimated the stickiness of per word, because it makes sense. It does make sense for many workflows still.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. I think we're really going to have to wrap it up there. It looks like we could have done another hour and a half easily here, but thank you very much. thank you very much to the audience. All the questions are coming in. I'm sorry that we've only scratched the surface with some of the questions, but it's really been a very interesting, thought-provoking discussion. So thank you very much to our panelists. Vasiliki, thank you. Mark, thank you very much, and Florian as well. Just to confirm, everyone will receive a certificate and a link to the recording within a few working days. CIOL members can log this roundtable on my CPD. So just once again, thanks again to our audience. Thank you. And thank you to our panelists for a wonderful and interesting, thought-provoking discussion on AI. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.